Her alarm goes off and she gets up to watch the morning news. Doesn't work no more but tells a lot of stories about her youth. Drinks more lately and got pills in many different colors too. Morning light is showing, she moves the chair to look out at her view. But her shop was built right across the street, and it stands where the sunrise used to be. In the afternoons on the couch to read, goes through old pictures and memories. Our heroes have been forgotten, our heroes so brave and bold. Our heroes have been forgotten, our heroes so they got old. Our heroes have been forgotten, our heroes so brave and bold. Our heroes have been forgotten, our heroes so they got old. Our heroes so they got old. Our heroes so they got old. Smiles they fade because her daughter only visits once a month. Since she got a family of her own, it's kept the two apart. Used to have so many visitors, but now the only one is the nurse that helps her move the chair to look out at the sun. But her shop was built right across the street, and it stands where the sunrise used to be. In the afternoons on the couch to read, goes through old pictures and memories. Our heroes have been forgotten, our heroes so brave and bold. Our heroes have been forgotten, our heroes so they got old. Our heroes have been forgotten, our heroes so brave and bold. Our heroes have been forgotten, our heroes so they got old.
This conference would not have been a reality without the collaborative efforts of all our partner entities and the different men and women behind these organizations. So,
salamat sa lahat ng mga sumuporta sa ating pong IPEC o International Ethics Peace Education Conference 2022. Kasi kung wala po sa inyong suporta o sa lahat ng mga sumuporta nito, katulad ng AUSN, ng SES Mindanao, ng HWPL per se, at ng Ordinata City University, hindi maging successful ito. Kaya kung anong nararamdaman ko ngayon, syempre galak, tuwa, at kapayapaan sa aking sarili at sana kapayapaan din para sa lahat ang naidulot itong celebration. Sabi yun na kailangan natin ipagpatuloy ito. Kasi marami tayong ginagawang conferences, na atin ang conferences, pero minsan natatapos lang yung sa conference lang. Pagkatapos, pagka-uwi natin sa bahay, ang katanungan doon, ano na ang application ating, or ano na na-apply natin sa nating conference. So sa akin, ang challenge na ito is talaga very challenging siya kasi nasa nabanggit ko kanina, from idea to actual, or the content to the reality. Kasi pag uwi natin sa bahay, kailangan natin isabuhay na ito. Paano? Siyempre yung mga papers na pinag-set natin, yung ating mga plenary na narinig natin, pwede natin apply ito. Paano natin i-apply? Sa ating pamilya, sa ating komunidad, sa ating mga kapitbahay. So kung ma-apply natin ito, then that will be the concrete realization of this program. Kasi magiging walang kwenta ang event na to pag uwi sa bahay, magbabalik pa rin tayo doon sa nakaisnan na parang wala tayong narinig sa conference na. And sa nabanggit ko kanina, maraming salamat no, sa ating partner ng The Education Channel, ng partner na HWPL. Kasi kung wala sa inyo ang event na to, ay masasabi ko talaga hindi successful. Kasi yung promotion ng peace ay hindi gawa ng isang tao. Hindi lang ng organizer. Hindi lang po ng mga participants. Lahat po tayo ay katulong dito at ang HWPL po ay talagang malaki ang tulong na naibigay ng ambag sa promotion ng conference na to. Kasi kung ang PEC lamang ang magkakandak ng seminar na to, conference na to, without the HWPL, parang hindi mararamdaman ng ating mga audience. Ano bang advocacy ninyo? Kasi ang Education Channel is a platform, digital platform. So ano ba yung inyong programa na masasabi natin na naka-anchored sa kapayapaan? So masasabi ko, with the partnership sa HWPL, doon naging magtagumpay, naging maayos, at naging mayroong pakinabang ang ating conference because HWPL help us a lot no, sa ang Education Channel para sa conference na to kasi we are promoting not only ethics but also peace, and that peace will become our culture, and that's why in my advocacy I'm promoting culture of peace.
By the way, the title of my paper is Ethics, Just Society, and the Culture of Peace. No, pinagsama-sama ko yung tatlong konsepto na yon. Ethics, Social Justice, and Peace. Although ang original title na topic na binigay sa akin ni Mark ay Dialogues of Ethics and Peace. Medyo mahirap yung binigay niyang topic sa akin. Sabi ko, paano kaya magda-dialogue yung ethics at saka peace? So yung kagad naisip ko, paano ko kaya pagsasamahin yung dalawa, no? So naisip ko na lang, pagsamasamahin ko kumbaga, the middle ground between ethics and peace is a just society. So that's basically my point. All right. Okay, so, introduction. First, some facts. During the 20th century, it has been estimated that up to 200 million people were killed by war, oppression, and other atrocities. There have been just over 1 million deaths due to conflict in the first 20 years of the century. If this trend were to continue over the next 80 years, it would result in an approximately 40-fold decrease in such death. There are an estimated 110 million active landmines and an equal amount in stockpile. According to Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, the estimated nuclear warhead count for the top 5 countries with most nuclear weapons in 2020, based on available information, is as follows. Russia, 6,375. The United States, 5,800. China, 320. France, 290. The United Kingdom, 215. Now, some declarations and resolutions on peace. By the way, I took this from the UN website. 1948, UN Declaration, or Universal Declaration of Human Rights. 1978 UN Declaration on the Preparation of Societies for Life in Peace, 1984 UN Declaration on the Right of Peoples to Peace, 1999 UN Declaration and Program of Action on the Culture of Peace, 2011 UN the Brussels Declaration Pledge to Peace, and 2016 UN Annex to Declaration of the Right on the Right to Peace, and 2018 the Global Resolution for the Establishment of Infrastructures to Support the Culture of Peace. We want peace. Who does not want peace? However, the facts and intention as evidenced by the declarations and resolutions seem inconsistent and do not match. There are initiatives to promote world peace, but it seems every time we make some breakthroughs, another conflict happens. For example, the Russia-Ukraine war, the Myanmar coup d'etat, the rival gang violence in Haiti that just happened recently. Not to mention the unending and often unreported violence against children and women, the unreported murders, rapes, kidnappings, child prostitution, religious violence, cyber attacks, and bullying. And let us not forget the violence that happened in our country. Kian de los Santos, Cararnais, and Reynaldo de Guzman, 3 teenagers who were killed from August 16 to 18, 2017, during the deadly war against drugs by the Duterte administration. And many others would fall victims to this bloody war that claimed many lives, mostly the poor. You remember Sonia and Frank Gregorio were killed in a shooting incident on December 20, 2020 that occurred in Panikitalak, lapit lang, after a heated argument over improvised noisemaker or boga. This deplorable situation is compounded by the unabated spread of fake news and troll farms. Can we ever feel safe and secure in our homes, in our community, in the world? We want peace, world peace. That ideal state of societal friendship and harmony among peoples and nations where there is no hostility and violence, that condition where there is no conflict like war, and freedom from fear of violence between individuals or groups. That condition where the rights and dignity of every human being are respected and safeguarded. That condition where truth and justice prevail. That condition where every person and family have food on their table and comfortable place to live in. That condition where every child can go to school without fear and get an education. That condition where every family man or woman can serve or can have a stable job and provide for their family. That condition where Mother Earth is safe from all human destructions. However, how can we attain this ideal? Attaining this ideal has something to do with how we conduct our lives, ourselves, and our actions. Attaining this ideal has something to do with the right way of living, not only in our private lives, but also in society. It has something to do with ethics. Now, the importance of ethics. As human beings, we are endowed with rationality. Because of our reason, we can deliberate and make conscious decisions. We are also endowed with free will, through which we determine our action, its course, and objectives. Since we are rational and free agents, we are responsible for our actions, and our responsibility is not only for our actions, but also for their consequences and the quality of the choice that we make. The extent of our knowledge and freedom determines the extent of our responsibility. Because of human freedom and responsibility, people are always concerned with what is right and what is wrong. We contemplate on what is the right thing to do and what is the bad thing to avoid. The end of all this is our desire to live a well-lived life. As human beings, we don't just want to live our lives, we want to live it well. As the saying goes, a well-lived life is a happy life. But then again, a happy life is also premised on peace. Ethics is concerned with the norms or standards or codes that would define or determine the morality of human conduct or behavior. It is motivated by the fact that people strive to be responsible agents of action. Being responsible agents of action starts with knowing which actions are good and which actions are bad. Thus, ethics guides us in determining what is good and right or what is bad or wrong. It serves as a compass for moral or ethical living. However, our lives do not just revolve around our personal lives, decisions, and actions. Responsibility and freedom are not just personal. There is a social and political aspect of our lives. And therefore, we exercise our freedom in our social relations and engagements. We take responsibility or social responsibility as a member of society. Therefore, ethics is important to society. It is essential and it has an essential and critical role in shaping our behaviors within society. Ethics serves as a moral guide to our daily living and helps us develop moral or ethical values and behavior. It conceptualizes moral values, norms, rules, and principles of moral or ethical life. Therefore, ethics is an integral part of forming a humane, just, orderly, and peaceful society. Now, what is a just society? When we imagine a humane, just, orderly, peaceful society, we cannot but think of moral values. Justice, integrity, honesty, truthfulness, fairness, equality, respect, etc. Without these moral values, our society will be chaotic, disorderly, and unjust. However, forming a just and humane society entails certain basic principles that serves as the foundation for a just and humane society. In the succeeding discussion, I present these principles inspired by my readings of the Gaudium et Spes. So first, respect the human person, human dignity and rights. In a just and humane society, there is respect for the human person and his dignity. No less than St. Thomas Aquinas and St. John Paul II express such a coherent expression of the mystery of the human person and his inherent dignity. Since the ultimate concern for justice is the human person, then there is a need to always safeguard the dignity and rights of the human person. We need to confront any ideology that destroys or degrades the human person based on a populist, materialistic, and consumerist orientation. In times of political, cultural, economic, and moral confusions and ambiguities, our guiding principle must be the spiritual rootedness of the human person as an imago Dei, or image of God. However, we also need to realize that man is not only a spiritual being, he is also a social being. The society must be formed so that the dignity and rights of every human person can be guaranteed. People have rights. They have right to productive work, fair wages, private property, and economic initiatives, among others. Number 2, uphold the value of reason and wisdom. Man is gifted with reason, and by his intellect, he is able to surpass the material universe precisely because he shares in the light of the divine mind. By relentlessly employing his talent through the ages, he has made progress in the practical sciences, technology, and liberal arts. In our time, man has been more successful in probing the material world and subjecting it to himself. But the intellectual nature of man must be perfected by wisdom, because it is wisdom that gently attracts the mind of man to a quest and a love for what is true and good. Through wisdom, he passes through the visible realities to those which are unseen. Our modern era needs such wisdom more than the past eras, so that discoveries and progress that man has attained can be further humanized. Our future could be compromised unless wiser men are forthcoming. So while reason allows us to progress, it is wisdom that will humanize the progress we have attained so that our future is secured. A just and humane society is anchored on the value of reason and wisdom. Number 3, form rightful conscience and authentic freedom. In the depths of his conscience, man recognizes a law that he does not impose upon himself, but which holds him to obedience. A rightful conscience always loves the good and avoids evil. The voice of conscience speaks when necessary to the heart of man. Do this, avoid this. For man has in his heart the law written by God. To obey it is the very dignity of man. According to it, he will be judged. Hence man, by forming a rightful conscience, affirms and perfects his inherent dignity. Again, a just and humane society is composed of men with rightful conscience, the conscience that will guide them in moral living. However, it is not only freedom that can man direct toward himself, goodness. Many people have fought for and eagerly pursued freedom. However, there are also orientations that distorts the very essence of freedom by interpreting it as the liberty to do whatever is pleasurable, even if it is evil. Do whatever you want to do. Authentic freedom is the ability to determine one's own action guided by what is true and good. Authentic freedom is an exceptional sign of the divine image within man. For God has willed that man remain under the control of his own decisions. Man's dignity demands that he acts according to a knowing and free choice that is personally motivated and prompted from within, not by a blind internal impulse or merely external pressure. Man achieves such dignity when he emancipates himself from all captivity to passion, when he pursues what is good through a self-determined, effective, and skillful action. The exercise of freedom is crucial in establishing a just society. And man is most himself when he subjects his own destiny to himself in the pursuit of goodness, truth, and beauty. Number 4, uphold truth and accountability. According to John Paul II, man is called to freedom and truth. Truth is man's unshakable foundation. There's no freedom without truth. Freedom and truth are integrated phenomena fused into one. He said, truth enlightens man's intelligence and shapes his freedom, leading him to know and love God and his fellow men. Only freedom stemming from truth begets good. Otherwise, freedom can be a force for evil, and it can generate into license. Man's free creative forces will only develop to the full if they are based on the truth, which is given to every man as an unshakable foundation. Only then will he be able to realize himself fully and even outgrow himself or transcend himself. There is no freedom without truth. However, truth forces something on us, and that is accountability. Accountability for our actions and decisions. In a just and humane society, these two are crucial elements. Truth is our armor against falsehoods, and accountability is our shield against impunity. Number 5, promote social responsibility. There is a need to be responsible not only for the creation of God, but also for the welfare of our fellow human beings. Our social nature makes it evident that the progress of the human person and the advance of society is based on our relationship with one another. In our time, human interdependence and interaction have grown rapidly over the world. And because of this, the common good, those conditions of human life which allow social groups and their individual members to attain their own fulfillment, takes an increasingly universal character. This involves the recognition of the rights and duties with respect to the whole human race. Every social group, therefore, must consider and respect the needs and legitimate aspirations of other groups and the general welfare of the entire human family. Social responsibility calls for equality and respect for the rights of others, especially for the right to life and to a decent living. But man can scarcely arrive at the needed sense of responsibility unless his living conditions allow him to become conscious of his dignity and to rise to his destiny by spending himself for God and for others. Human freedom is often crippled when a man encounters extreme poverty, just as it withers when he indulges in too many of life's comforts and imprisons himself in a kind of splendid isolation. Freedom acquires new strength, by contrast, when man consents to the unavoidable requirements of social life, takes on the manifold demands of human partnership, and commits himself to the service of the human community. Now, how do we promote a culture of peace for a just and humane society? A just and humane society is anchored on a culture of peace. The challenge now is to promote a culture of lasting peace, a culture where the human person with his dignity is respected. Respect for and development of human life and promoting human dignity require peace. Peace, as we always hear, is not merely the absence of war. Peace cannot be attained in the world without safeguarding the person's welfare, respecting their dignity and the rights of individuals to free association and interaction among themselves. Now, in the following discussions, I propose specific initiatives and courses of action by which we can promote a culture of peace. This proposal, I actually developed this some 20 years ago when I delivered a paper in another international conference on violence and culture of peace. And this is really very timely, and I take this conference as a very positive step towards peace. And it's an opportunity for me to go back to that old reflection of mine about this culture of peace. While theoretical principles provide us with certain guidelines and intellectual foundations for peace, concepts alone cannot create a concrete culture of peace. Kahit mag-discussion tayo rito kung puro lang tayo daldal, walang peace na makikreate. No? Because peace is not a concept. It should be a concrete human condition. Attitudes and concrete course of action are needed to establish a kind of culture we hope to attain. So number one, change in human attitudes. Violence is not only caused by social factors. It is also due to a man's aggressive nature, which sometimes predisposes him to violent behavior. In the paper that I mentioned, I developed there the psychological foundation of violence in man. However, the aggressive nature is rooted in the physiological aspect of man. It stems from his lower order of passions and instincts. Such lower order can be governed and controlled by the higher order of reason. The mind and the heart can check man's violent and aggressive behavior. And this can be done by allowing the mind and the heart to rule over the lower order of passions and instincts. We cannot ignore our passions and instincts, but we can put them under the mind and heart's guidance and control. A change of mind and heart, word and action is essential to our work for peace. What we need most is not a change of men, but a change in men. In a culture of violence, the human person is both the victim and the culprit. Yung tao yung pumapatay, at tao rin ang pinapatay. The irony. Therefore, there must be a change in man's attitudes towards the person, his life, his rights, his dignity, and the basic institutions of the human persons like the family and the community. We can achieve this through, one, respect and love for the human person. Second, understanding and sensitivity to differences. And third, genuine concern and dialogue. First, love and respect. The first basic element of this change in the human attitudes is love and respect for the human person. The human person has a higher value than things or objects. Every human person enjoys the same dignity and equal rights. Hindi porke maraming laman ng pera yung bulsa mo, mas malaki na, mas mataas ang dignidad mo kaysa doon sa walang pera. All of us are human persons and we are all equal in the eyes of God. Hence, every man must work toward the proper attitude of loving and respecting human life and human dignity. Love and respect transcend boundaries and differences. What is important is the commonality shared by people. Respect and love should also be extended to those who think and act differently than we do in social, political, and even in religious matters. Number 2, understanding and sensitivity. While we are all persons, we also have our differences. We belong to different nations, races, and religions, and have our own cultures and practices. However, these differences should not be the source of conflict among us, although in reality, they are the sources of conflicts. Different people must transcend those differences and work for harmony among themselves. Moreover, one basic element for the promotion of harmony among different people or different cultures and races and religions is the proper understanding of these differences. Differences among religions, races, cultures, and peoples. This understanding should bring about sensitivity to these differences. We know that each group of people has its own religious and cultural practices and doctrines. We need to be understanding and sensitive to these practices and beliefs. This does not mean accepting their beliefs, but respecting them. Respect for other people's individuality and uniqueness. Number 3, genuine concern and dialogue. Another element that helps to promote an atmosphere of harmony is genuine concern and dialogue. We know that certain ideas or interests cannot be easily reconciled. And when there are seemingly irreconcilable differences, the best option is a genuine concern and dialogue. In genuine concern dialogue, one need not abandon his own standpoint, but tries to extend one's hand over the other in a dialogue characterized by respect and sensitivity. Genuine dialogue is an open exchange of ideas and beliefs with the hope that such exchange will bring about mutual understanding and harmony. This can be done in issues or matters of religion, culture, and some other interests. Of course, the mechanism for that will have to be developed by interest groups. Kanina narinig ko si Sir na nagsasalita tungkol doon sa peace clubs. Next, moral revolution. One cause of the culture of violence is the deterioration of our social and moral life and values. The best way to counter this is a change in our moral life. What is needed is a moral revolution, a drastic change in our moral values. And it can be done through, 1, renewed ethic of justice and caring. Next, promotion of personal responsibility. Next, the strengthening of fundamental moral values. And lastly, formation of ethical character. Now, what do I mean by that? Number 1, renewed ethic of justice and caring. Peace is an enterprise of justice. Justice is a virtue that requires us to give to others what is due to them. Rightly so. It consists of the constant and firm will to give what is due to fellow man. It exposes an individual to respect the rights of others and to establish harmonious human relationships. It promotes equity concerning the person and the common good, and requires that we share the fruits of the earth with others. That's the minimum requirement of justice. However, justice alone is not enough. Justice may emphasize the autonomy of the moral person in giving to others what is due to him, and may put more emphasis on autonomy and separateness. A renewed ethic of justice should stress more the interconnection and interrelation of persons. This renewed justice or renewed ethic of justice is based on an ethic of caring. This ethic of caring stresses our concern for others and our interpersonal relationship with them as the basis for giving them what is due to them. While justice tells us to regulate our action, our lives, following certain general moral principles, a renewed ethic of justice based on caring stresses the good and the welfare of others, unmediated by principles, unmediated by rules or judgments. It tells us that we ought to be concerned about their welfare. One who cares about the welfare of others without having to rely on or be guided by explicit moral principles or thinking is more connected with those others than someone who acts only on the basis of such mediating principles and thought. Bibigay ka kasi natutunan mo sa school magbigay. Pero wala naman sa loob. Number 2, promotion of personal responsibility. Most of the problems we experience in life and society are due to our failure to accept personal responsibility. With all the problems in our society, it seems no one is willing to admit that he or she is responsible. Whatever happens to our world is the responsibility of everyone. So if there is violence all over us, that is because we fail to be responsible for everyone in our society. As persons, we are given our freedom. As persons, we are free moral agents. And as such, we must be responsible for our actions and the consequences of our actions. Therefore, the notion of individual freedom requires a concomitant view of personal responsibility. Nowadays, people talk about freedom all the time. They forget that freedom has a twin brother or sister. May kakambal yung freedom, di ba? Responsibility. Since as individuals, we are free to choose how to lead our lives and our actions, then we must be held accountable for those choices and actions. The promotion of personal responsibilities require that everyone, not only be responsible for his action, but also for the consequences of those actions. You post something on Facebook, fake news. You're not responsible only for the fake news, but for the consequences of those fake news. The promotion of personal responsibility extends to our fellow men, neighbor, society, and the world. Number 3, strengthening of fundamental moral values. The modern world is marked by great progress in economics, commerce, technology, and science. But side by side with this progress is the weakening, or worse, the abandonment of certain fundamental moral values. We are pressured to keep up with the pace of development. In the rush of everyday life, we become absorbed into the prevailing materialism and individualism, which is so characteristic of the modern world. In a fast-changing world, we often change our values. Simbilis ng pagpalit ng cellphone. Fundamental moral values are either ignored or totally abandoned. Values like honesty, truthfulness, justice, and respect for others are delegated to the background and replaced by dishonesty, falsity or falsehood, injustice, selfishness, and other pragmatic, relativistic, and individualistic values. Parang tinapon natin sa bintana yung mga values natin. There is a need to strengthen our moral values, which should start in our families and our schools. Because values are formed during the early years of a person's life. If these values are not fortified during the age of formation, chances are the person will abandon these moral values with pragmatic or selfish values in the face of the demands and pressures of the modern world. We need to nurture and strengthen our values By nurturing the value of faith and hope, we strengthen our spirits. By strengthening the value of compassion, we are moved to show concern towards others. By strengthening humility and kindness, we put the needs and interests of others ahead of our own. By nurturing patience and perseverance, we endure the long struggle for justice and peace. And with charity, we treat others with respect and love. Number 4, formation of ethical character. The real ethical character involves the adoption of absolute values and norms. The formation of ethical character is significantly oriented towards absolute values, moral virtues, and nurturing interpersonal relationships with fellow men. Thus, a moral character is a well-rounded moral personality, imbued with good values, with moral virtues, and the capacity to care for others. Strengthening our moral values can be done through character formation or character education. But what is character education? We always hear this. Character education formation is about developing good virtues and moral values and deepening of the individual's capacity for interpersonal relationships. Character formation is not just acquiring the right views or politically correct opinions and concepts about politics, family, economy, ecology, and other controversial issues. It is more than just forming one's mind and acquiring motor skills. It is about building a well-rounded moral responsibility. The formation of ethical character is not simply educating the mind or the intellect and disregarding the importance of the affective and moral aspect of the person, or just depositing information into the minds of young people. Parang banking system. It is developing values in their hearts. When we feed them with only information and ideas, they simply become smart or bright, but devoid of values like honesty, love, generosity, respect, and understanding. Any character formation conceived independently of its relational context would lead ultimately to solitariness and to a man all for himself. Sometimes, those who sow violence are gifted with intelligence and skill. Galing nga nilang gumawa ng bomba. But because they are devoid of ethical character, they use their intelligence and skill to hurt and kill people. Now third, social action. A change of human attitude and moral revolution is not enough. So the first two, they're not enough. There must be some concrete actions in the social realm if we need to promote a culture of peace. The forces of competition, conflict, and aggression, and domination advanced by some sociological theories can be confronted and countered by the forces and principles of dialogue, cooperation, community building, and development. The following are concrete steps that should be undertaken in order to promote a culture of peace. 1, participation in the community. 2, intercultural and interreligious dialogues. C, conflict resolution and social development. First, participation in community and the common good. Participation in the communal life is oriented toward a value, and that value is the common good. Community is not simply a plurality of persons, but that dynamic unity, the dynamic unity of that plurality. So it's not just being united, it's not just to be dynamic. In a community, the individuals do not simply exist and act in common with others. According to Karol Wojtyła or John Paul II, the coexistence and cooperation of members in a community have a fundamental norm, and that is the common good. The common good, in the subjective sense, conditions and somehow initiates the person to act together with others. In this sense, the common good corresponds to the social nature of man. The common good, in the subjective sense, is the principle of correct participation, which allows the person acting with others to perform authentic action and fulfill them through these actions. Participations in the community and in the common good enables the person to realize his full potential in communion with his fellow man. Number 2, interreligious dialogues. The term interreligious dialogue is meant to cover the various forms of relationships with people of different religious traditions and cultures. Such interaction and collaboration are aimed at mutual knowledge, enrichment, lessening of tension and misunderstanding, and promoting common goals. Of course, there are many forms of interreligious dialogues. First, interreligious dialogue can be an intellectual exchange in which learned people expose their religious beliefs, moral code, and rituals and hold a debate with their interlocutors. This could be a dialogue, an intellectual dialogue, or academic dialogue. However, this form of doctrinal discourse may not be beneficial, especially if those involved are not prepared enough and have not reached a certain level of mutual trust. The second form is the dialogue at the level of daily life, where people of different religions interact in the family, in the workplace or recreation, in society in general, drawing from the ideals of the religions without discussing specific religious questions. No, pwede naman magsama-sama Muslim at Kristiyano, hindi pinag-uusapan yung mga doktrina nila. Pwede silang mag-basketball. Diba? The third is the dialogue of social works, by which believers of different religions join hands to promote some projects for the benefit of the community. Fourth is exchange of religious experiences, where people who are deeply committed to their religious beliefs share their experiences on topics such as union with God, prayer, silence, self-control, surrender to God or Allah or the Absolute or Yahweh. Whatever form they may take, interreligious dialogues promote mutual respect and understanding among peoples of different religious beliefs. And number 3, conflict resolution. And this is very important, no? Because we cannot avoid conflict. Conflict will always be there, but how do we deal with them, with these conflicts? A conflict may stem from a clash of interests, values, or deprivation of one's party's basic needs. These interests and values are basically grounded on our need for recognition, development, and self-actualization. It's based on our security, identity, and bonding. Conflict resolution is a peaceful and mutually satisfactory way to end or significantly or permanently de-escalate a conflict. One can end a conflict through violence or war, or by destroying one's opponent. Pag pinatay mo na yung kaaway mo, di wala na conflict. No? 6 feet under the ground. Or, he can also end a conflict by surrender or capitulation. Or one can temporarily intensify a conflict by deceiving one's opponent. While these ways may end conflict, they cannot be regarded as beneficial options for ending conflicts, because if you out conflict that way, babalik uli yung conflict. Rido. Diba? Hence, the key to conflict resolution is the recognition and satisfaction of these basic needs of both parties. The conflicting parties, the people or groups directly involved in a conflict, can be the true conflict resolvers. Kailangan pag-usapan. No? However, parties' perception of each other and of the issues of the conflict may be so biased and limiting that they cannot see mutually satisfactory, mutually beneficial, or integrative options, even when they decide to settle their differences. In such cases, intermediaries or third parties can be the most helpful. Kahit sa mag-asawa, di ba, kailangan mayroong third party na papasok dyan. Hindi yung third party na yung kabila, baka iba yung iniisip nyo. Conflict resolution can be facilitated by mediators, intermediaries, or third parties. However, they do not conflict with resolvers. They cannot resolve the conflict. They can only facilitate directly involved parties in their endeavors to settle or resolve their conflict. The identity and interest of minority groups must be recognized and must be given more opportunities for development, and their culture must be respected. Both parties must be willing to work out their differences and avoid actions that will aggravate the conflicts. The key to conflict resolution include the preservation of the right of peoples to peace, the renunciation of the use of force, and the settlement of disputes by peaceful means. Number 4, social development. Social development is a key element in establishing a just and orderly world. In such a world, people need not resort to violent means to secure their basic needs. In the words of John Paul II, just as there is a collective responsibility for avoiding war, so there is a collective responsibility for promoting development or social development. In most cases, the root of a war is real and serious grievances like injustices suffered, legitimate aspirations frustrated, or poverty, and the exploitation of multitudes of desperate people who see no real responsibility of improving their conditions through peaceful means. Development not only serves the interests of justice, but also contributes greatly to lasting peace. Hence, social development initiatives like generous and targeted assistance, sustainable development, economic empowerment of the poor, and support for human rights and democracy are essential works of peace. And lastly, global solidarity. The last requirement is a global solidarity. Because peace is not only local, peace should be global. The promotion of peace and human dignity is not just the concern of some people or some countries. It is the concern of the whole world. And what we hope for can only be realized if the whole world is one and united in this goal. Solidarity requires that we think and act in terms of our obligations as members of the global community, despite our race, religion, or cultural differences. In an increasingly interconnected world, loving our fellow men and neighbors has a global dimension. Global solidarity challenges us to give more of ourselves emotionally, financially, and spiritually, and to receive more by seeing with our own eyes the struggles and joys inherent in the lives of our fellow men around the world. It reflects the recognition that our responsibility to our fellow men has an international dimension, and that we are called to work for justice and peace for people in other areas of the world. Despite our differences, we are all part of one human family, and we have duties to others, especially the underprivileged, the oppressed, the victims of wars, the poor, and the hungry. Solidarity must be established against poverty, hunger, child prostitution, drug trafficking, kidnapping, and other forms of violence. We also need to establish solidarity to promote children's welfare, women's rights, labor rights, the welfare of war victims and other victims of violence. Global solidarity can be manifested in the following concrete steps: economic equality, cooperation, and nuclear disarmament. I will not be discussing that. That's too long, no? So just to mention that there. Now let me go to my conclusion. I hope you are still awake, no? And I hope you can follow my discussions. No? Okay. Conclusion. World peace, a global challenge. World peace is a global challenge, and our response must also be global. Almost 60 years ago, the Catholic Church, through Pope St. John the 23rd, laid out before us a visionary framework for world peace in his encyclical letter, Pacem in Terris. Napakaganda nung title nung Peace in the World, which retains its freshness today. Pacem in Terris proposed a political order in the service of the common good, defined in terms of the defense and promotion of human rights. In a prophetic insight, anticipating the globalization of our problems, Pope St. John the 23rd called for a new forms of political authority adequate to satisfy the needs of the universal common good. World peace does not consist merely in the absence of war, nor can it be reduced solely to the maintenance of a balance of power between enemies, nor is it brought about by dictatorship. World peace is found in sharing the goodness of life, in living together in harmony despite our differences. Peace can never be attained if every human person's personal well-being and dignity are not safeguarded, and if everyone does not truly and trustingly share with others the riches of his inner spirit and talents. The Catholic Church's positive vision of a peaceful world includes, among others, the primacy of global common good for political life, the role of the social and economic development in securing the conditions for a just and lasting peace, the moral imperative of solidarity between affluent, influential nations and poor, developing ones, and the recognition of the universal common good. A peaceful world is a global order oriented to the full development of all peoples, with governments committed to the rights of citizens and framework of authority that enables the world community to address fundamental problems that individual governments fail to resolve. In this framework, sovereignty is in the service of the people. All political authority has as its end the promotion of the common good, particularly the defense of human rights. Forming a just and humane society and promoting a culture of peace is arduous. It's difficult, considering that behind us is a human history marked by violent struggles and transformation. This challenging task is compounded by an environment and culture where falsehoods, impunity, and acts of violence are so much part of our daily life and often glorified or magnified by the media. The challenge to create a world where the human person is respected, a culture where his human dignity is promoted, and his human rights are protected in a just and humane society is a big task. However, peace is humankind's hope for a blissful and happy life. We hope that in the near future, we will be living in a world of peace and not violence. We hope that our society will be just, orderly, and humane, and our children will no longer live in fear, but in trust, security, and harmony. Thank you very much for listening.